ESPN Radio.
Second Down on ESPN Radio is presented to you by the Uniform Source. Christian Gokel alongside Cam Ursery here on this Friday afternoon. So happy to have y'all hanging out with us. This is officially high school football season. We did have a few games kick off last night, but a huge Friday coming up for you, and we'll have live action for you tonight on ESPNCoastal.com and ESPN Savannah's Facebook page. PJ Zuko, who will be joining us momentarily, will have the call of Windsor Forest and New Hampstead coming up on ESPNCoastal.com. You'll be able to watch the game live there with PJ on the call. So again, high school football kicking off all around the area. We'll give you a full schedule coming up here in a little bit. And again, if you missed PJ's high school first look last night, he broke down all of the key matchups coming up tonight for local high schools. So you can head to Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, ESPNCoastal.com, anywhere you get your podcast, and check out high school first look from last night. Again, PJ does as good a job as anybody breaking down all of those games. So really excited for high school football. You can just kind of feel it in the air. It's hot, Cam. It's hot. So you just know in South Georgia, those first few weeks of high school football season, you don't get the crisp fall air. It's going to be hot. It's going to be miserable. It's still going to be sunlight into the third quarter in a lot of these games. You don't have quite the Friday night lights until you get, about to halftime. But, man, I'm excited to see bands on the field. I'm excited to see the players running out, ripping down banners, maybe see a few people trip over each other. I'm just excited, man. Football's back, and it's a beautiful thing because when you're in this part of the country, you get football on Friday night, you get football on Saturday, and you get football on Sunday. And so it is just a majority of your week, because you get some Thursday night football and some Monday night football too. A majority of your week is covered up with live football.
Yeah. Everybody stay hydrated. That's my best advice. No.
Yeah. Start now.
Start now. But
including the fans.
Now I'm not joking about that. Start now. I mean, that's good advice. But I mean, high school football, you like to see the new, what you want to call it, generation playing, the new up and coming generation. I guess you could say that. Just playing some good old fashioned football.
Think about it. You say the up and coming generation. Think about some of the players that we've covered just over the past few years. Ernest Jones from Ware County. He's now in the NFL with the Rams. DJ Dallas from Glenn Academy. He's now in the NFL with the Seattle Seahawks. We talked about this the other day. There's literally 3 wide receivers that are going to be playing. And you'll probably see this at some point this year. 3 wide receivers for West Virginia this year who all played in the Savannah area. You had Winston Wright from Memorial Day, Sam Brown from New Hampstead, and Sam James from Richmond Hill. So you'll literally have 3 guys, if you watch a West Virginia game, all from the Savannah area lining up for West Virginia. So there's just guys. If you're watching Georgia games this year, you'll be watching Nolan Smith coming off the edge for Georgia, and then if Georgia scores a touchdown, jackpot from Glenn Academy kicking field goals. You have a bunch of guys. Nate Moon playing for Georgia Tech. They have somebody else, PJ, on the defensive line.
Yeah. They have a few different guys. Honestly, now you're right. He's a Jenkins graduate, and
his name's just slipping my mind right now.
My mind right now. Yeah. Give me a few seconds.
No, you're good. But again, point is, just really excited for football season coming up, and again, PJ Zuko will be on the call. I'll be up there at the game as well. So, what I want to get to is this: there's a lot of stuff you can do on Friday night. And I get it. Sometimes you just want to go out. You need to have a nice dinner. You can do that beforehand. At some point this year, even if you don't have a kid in school, even if you don't support a local high school, like you don't have a team, if you love football, go to a high school game. I think, number one, you'll be really impressed by the level of play in the area. South Georgia's one of the, I'd say, top 20 areas in the country for high school football. So you'll be really impressed in just the level of play. But also, I think for those of you out there who haven't been to a game in a long time, you kind of don't remember what it's like. And it's really a cool experience, number one, because you get the atmosphere. It's Friday night. You can smell the grill cooking. You have all the people out there having a good time, cheering, yelling. But at the same time, no commercial breaks. It's quick. It's quick. The only big pause you have is what, PJ, a 20-minute halftime?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, you get a 20-minute halftime. And what do you do with that? You stand in line and get food. And you go to the bathroom, you come back, you watch the second half. I encourage everyone listening to this, no matter where you're listening to this, go watch a high school football game at some point this year. for a few different reasons. Number one, it's fun. I mean, what else are you doing on a Friday night? You can go out and spend $100 going out. You can go out and spend $20 go and watch a football game, right?
No, that's true.
That money that you spend at the football game, or if you go to a volleyball, softball game, just go watch high school athletics, goes back into your community. So you're reinvesting that money. So I highly encourage you. You can go out after the games. It's a beautiful thing. They kick off at 7:30. Takes about 2.5 hours. River Street's not even popping until 10 o'clock.
Oh, man.
And if you're a real one, Congress Street's not even popping until about 10 or 11 o'clock. So you're good. You go watch a football game, have a good time, and then you go out afterwards. So I highly encourage everyone listening to this right now, at least some point this year, go out, spend a few bucks, buy some tickets, and go watch and support your local high school team. Because I think the thing that will happen to you is you'll get invested.
And to attest to you, before I moved down here, I didn't even know. I knew football was, pretty good down here, but I didn't know it was this good. I just didn't know the culture's different too.
For sure.
It's totally different from football in Atlanta. Not saying, it's far better, but it's just different. They take it a lot more serious down here.
I've told you guys this before. When I lived in Atlanta, growing up playing football, it was like they spoke with such reverence about South Georgia football. I mean, it was almost like mystical. Like I thought there was like different types of human beings that existed down here. And they're all just 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. But just the way they spoke about it, like, hey, I said it, the line that our coach hit us with is they have nothing to do down there except lift weights and play football. Now, is that an extreme generalization? Yes. But I think more so than anything, they were trying to say, if you go to a high school in Atlanta, the neighborhood cares about it, like the surrounding area for the most part. The parents care about it, and a few people from the neighborhood will come out and watch the game. And you'll pack it out. I mean, a lot of those schools out there have like 3,000, 4,000 kids in it. So, I mean, they'll pack it out, almost half of it just with students, and you have the band. Stadiums will fill up. Go to a Ware County football game.
Mm-hmm.
And think about what I just said. Ware County football game. That is, the county shows up for those games. Go out to Pierce. The county shows up for those games. Go to, I still think one of the coolest spectacles I've seen, and I've been to an NFC championship. I've been to Georgia, Florida. I've been all over the place and seen a whole bunch of different professional events and college events. I still think one of the coolest atmospheres I've experienced is the city championship between Brunswick and Glenn Academy. You walk into a stadium that holds 10,000 people, and both sides are full, and one side's completely blue and the other side's completely red. And it's schools that are less than 3 miles apart from each other?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's the city championship.
Mm-hmm. And the city shows up.
Right.
For sure.
So it's different. It's a whole different level, and it's something you talk about all year down here, which kind of, as you mentioned, Cam, if you live in Atlanta, it's something to do on Friday night 10 times a year, right? So
yeah,
a fifth of your Fridays, right? Down here, it's 365.
Absolutely. You got people asking about the teams. You got people talking about the teams, trying to figure out what's going on. I mean, yeah, absolutely. It's like you said, it's a full year spectacle and event. I remember my dad actually moved down here a few months before us, and it was during the football season and everything. And he actually was working at Fletzy and whatnot, and he had a buddy say, "Well, what are you doing tonight?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna call the wife, call the kids, all that stuff." And he's like, "Well, if you have some time, come with me and let's watch some football." He's like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, let's watch some football." Took him to the city championship game, and my dad. I remember my dad calling me that night and being like, "I know you guys love sports. Obviously, you guys are going to love like the kind of community and everything that you have down here, especially when these two schools play each other." And it certainly lived up to that expectation while I'm down here. And of course, hey, I'm still talking about high school football. So it is what it is there. But now you're exactly right about that. I mean, driving through and you think about when you don't grow up near it, like you said, you hear about it and you're like, all right, they're exaggerating about most of this stuff. But when you say a county or a city shuts down on a Friday night to go support their team, go drive through Wayne County on a Friday night, baby. Especially if they have a home game. You're not getting in any businesses or anything. Well,
a lot of these cities around here, like Nahunta and Baxley and stuff like that, where you have like Appling County playing, the stadium's literally built downtown.
Yeah. Yeah. You just go from where, like you said, grab a bite to eat beforehand or whatever, and then walk to wherever, because that place is closing. in
Yep.
about 30 minutes
Oh yeah.
and walk to the stadium, make sure you can get a seat. So no, it's fantastic. The culture is amazing. Can't wait to be out there tonight. And as you mentioned, we have a lot of guys as well on Saturdays playing and getting ready to.
Oh, you can't turn on a football game now.
You mentioned that. I had to, I was sitting over here for like a minute and a half trying to. Daquan Dowse, Calvary
Thank
Day
you.
there at Georgia Tech, excuse me. And I got high school football in the brain, but at Georgia Tech, and they're filling up on the defense. But Akilo Stone from Jenkins, that's the one I was thinking of. And then actually Gavin Stewart's on the roster too, as a place kicker and kind of utility man.
Yeah, we mentioned Nate Moon.
Yeah, Nate Moon. Yeah. Well, I was you mentioned that, so I was trying to figure out the other ones. But yeah, Akilo Stone, Daquan Dowse filling up that defensive line for Georgia Tech. So no, like you said, you flip on a college football game this Saturday, this year, there's going to be coastal Georgia, Savannah area guys, 912 guys, absolutely everywhere. I do love the West Virginia thing because
that's wild.
If
West Virginia's just like, you know what? If we need a wide receiver, we're not messing around.
If you think about like how they built that too, I mean, all those guys are like different body types and different specifications and like great things they do characteristics. Yeah. Well, when they get on the offense together, so you can have them Winston Wright in the slot and the Sams on the outside. And you got all Savannah filling up the receiving charts for West Virginia.
And I do think like people have been recruiting like Brunswick and Glenn Academy and Ware County and Pierce County for a while. Like I mentioned it on the story I did on Thomas Castellanos online when he got selected to the Elite Eight. I was surprised that Fred Gibson was the last Ware County player to be selected to the Elite 11, just because of how many great players they've had come through there. But I mean, the starting quarterback for Georgia last year for a majority of the season was Stetson Bennett, Pierce County, right? There's been a ton of talent that's come from South Georgia. Like I'd say like central South Georgia all the way to the coast, right? But now I think it's starting to creep up the coast a little bit. Obviously, you've had like Alan Bailey come out of MCA, but I think it's starting to creep up the coast because, I mean, I'm not trying to take shots, but like when has Richmond Hill been a elite force in big-time high school football?
Yeah.
They are.
Been a while.
Right? Yeah. And now you start slowly moving to the Savannah area. Like BC's been good, like very good for over a decade now. Competing. But now Savannah Christian, who has won state championships in the past, they're getting back to that level. Country Day, they have a really good team. Calvary Day, they have a really good team. But I think the biggest growth has really been in the public schools. I mean, we saw a couple years ago, Jenkins had one of the better defenses we've seen, period, end of story, anywhere in high school football in the state of Georgia in a while. So many D1 FBS talents off of that defense that went on. But I mean, you look at them now and they have a running back in Demazio Harris who's probably that talented there. So it's going to be fun to watch Jenkins this year. Windsor Forest, Jeb Stewart's doing a really good job over there. Kyle Hockman at New Hampstead, he suddenly built that program into something. Islands with Deshaun Printup.
Huge.
They're winning playoff games now. So public schools in Savannah now are starting to make some noise. So it's I think this is one of the hottest areas in the country in terms of football development, because I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with, and this is not where I thought we were going to go, but hey, here we are. I think a lot of it has to do with social media. And I think a lot of it has to do with Huddle and stuff like that, but also in the proliferation. And I'm not just saying us, but like the investment the media community has made. And we realize how good these players are, and we're going to make noise until everybody else starts paying attention too. I think that started to happen more, whereas it's so easy for a coach to fly into Hartsfield Jackson and just hit 20 different schools in a couple of days in Atlanta and then get back out and go back to whatever school they are. What's the closest like airport that has all the connections? So I understand you have an airport in Savannah, but a lot of times you have to make the connecting flight and you have to hop on and fly to Atlanta and then you fly to Savannah or fly to this. Closest one's really Jacksonville. Right.
And even then you're still probably flying to Atlanta.
Right.
Yeah.
But so like for the most part, coaches just do like the one-time swing through, unless it's just like an absurd player where it's just like you know he's a 5-star, everyone else in the country's fighting over him, right? It's like Sam James, he should have been able to go anywhere in the country.
Absolutely.
And West Virginia probably was like, no, shh.
right, yeah.
We want this guy, but it's just because he's in Richmond Hill. It's a tough place to get to for majorities of these Alabamas, Georgias, Clemsons, right? It's kind of out of the way. But I think with Huddle and with the proliferation of how easy it is to get film on these guys now and to watch these guys, I think now you're starting to see these guys start to and they've always made it to, like, and been great players
Yeah.
in college, and then obviously a lot of them gone to play in the league. But it's so much easier now to recognize how good these guys are.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big reason why you're starting to see, like we said, you and I kind of talked about it a couple years ago. We were like, every single game we turn on, there's a guy we used to cover.
Yeah.
And it did not used to be that way.
No, it's every single one. And like you said, I think, what do they say about families, right? And raising a newborn, it takes a village. Yeah. And I really think that's kind of what it's been when you look at the growth of high school football around the area. And it's a combination of all those things. And when you talk about the media, it's not just one person or anything like that. It's a combination of all those things, social media, just all the different outlets you can have to get the attention on what these guys are doing. And that's the most important thing. I mean, the whole basis of this whole project and passion is making sure that the guys that are talented enough, and there's tons of them, to go on to the next level in any sort of level and make their way, take that next step whereas before maybe they couldn't. That's what it's all about.
We talked to Sean Quinn about it. I mean, he took over as the head coach at Savannah State, and you kind of readjust what you're looking at recruiting wise. And you're like, because for a long time, Savannah State's going and getting guys from Atlanta, and they still will go out and reach out to guys, but going to Atlanta, and they're going down into Florida to get all their players. Like, a majority of their roster was not from the local area. And I remember talking to him, and I've talked to other high school head coaches. I'm like, if I'm Savannah State, what's the closest college to me that's competing for the recruits? Valdosta State?
Yeah. I mean, pretty much.
Valdosta State's the closest one. So you have this entire swath, because you're in Division II. You have this entire swath of area that basically goes, like, if you start in Savannah and just go out on a radius, you basically go out to Waycross and Pierce, up past Augusta, take it over to Macon, and cut it down through North Florida and Jacksonville. That's one of the best recruiting areas in the country.
Absolutely.
And so now look at Savannah State's last few recruiting classes.
Yeah. And like you said, it's kind of like a triangle, right? Because you got Valdosta State over here, you got Jacksonville and the colleges there. And then you probably have, like, when you're talking about mileage, Mercer and the Citadel.
Yeah.
But, like, other than that, I mean, take it on up, man. Do exactly what they're doing. And to their point, that's exactly what they have done. And you've seen them get better and better over the past few years. And, you look at all the players they have from Southeast Georgia and kind of the Hilton Head area on that team. It's no surprise to any of us that know these guys playing in high school football. But I think if you talk to some of the other people, maybe it would be. But no, these guys were so chock full of college football type level talent in this area, and it's I'm very happy that it's going on and moving on to new spaces and new places.
So again, PJ Zuko coming up tonight on the high school game of the week. They're fueled by End Market. New Hampstead and Windsor Forest is our first game of the year. You'll be able to watch that live for free on ESPNcoastal.com. That's a very important part. No paywall, no nothing. Just go to ESPNcoastal.com. You click on the first link you see, and you will be able to watch on that page live high school football. So all that coming up tonight. We got to take a break, though. We'll come back, dive into some college football news right here on ESPN Radio. Second Down on ESPN Radio is presented to you by The Uniform Source. Christian Gokel here alongside PJ Zuko and Cam Urshery. Got some college football news to dive into. Nicole Auerbach from The Athletic reporting that the Big Ten, Pac-12, and ACC are expected to make a formal announcement about their alignment soon, perhaps as early as next week. Now, we've been talking about this a little bit because there's been some rumblings that they've had some meetings, at least the commissioners of the conference have had some meetings about possibly aligning. And I think when people hear aligning it to me, like, are they making a super conference? Are they over here going to make a
It's the first thing everyone goes to now.
30 plus team super conference? Are going to do 30 and just like cut some people out? Who gets left out? I think more so than anything, and this is the comparison I made in the rundown. I think Greg Sankey is Thanos in this analogy. And the Big 12 or Big 10, excuse me, Big 12's irrelevant. Like the
soon to be.
What's the
If not already.
who is the first Hulk actor?
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
man.
Edward Norton.
yeah.
right?
Edward Norton, like the
Yeah.
Edward Norton Hulk, right? It's just that's the Big 12 right now. No, the ACC, Big 10, and Pac-12 are the Avengers. They're trying to stop Thanos from snapping his fingers and completely wiping out the college football landscape.
Right.
So what does that mean? When the Big 10, Pac-12, and ACC say they're aligning, I think what we can take from that is this. It's not that they're going to form a super conference. It's that they can now go and not as of yet, they're not tearing up the games they have scheduled in the future, but they can look at 5 to 10 years from now and look at these TV executives and say, we are going to be playing each other. So when you sign contracts with us, with our conference, and you're signing our TV deals, you know that Clemson is going to be playing USC at some point, right? Ohio State at some point is going to be playing Oregon, which I think they're playing
It's,
this year.
it's
They're
happening
playing
this
this
year.
year.
Yeah, can't wait for
But
it.
I mean, we'll have Penn State, NC State, right? Like it's just instead of Penn State trying to go out there and find somebody, you have NC State, or you have NC State on the docket.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I think when they mean scheduling alignment, they can now say we're going to have these big deals. Also, I think you're going to see maybe Notre Dame, this smooths the transition of Notre Dame being folded into the ACC because now they can just be a part. I've always said this. As soon as it becomes more lucrative for Notre Dame to join a conference, they'll join a conference. But right now, the ACC's TV deal is embarrassing.
Mhm.
It's embarrassing. I think it's a fourth of what the SEC schools get.
Right.
Which, if you're talking about level playing field, it's not the NCAA in recruiting. It's how much money do you have to spend.
Exactly.
And right now, the SEC, I believe, has 4 times as much money to spend per school than the ACC does. So that's the first thing, is you can go out and tell these TV execs, we're going to have 3 of the 5 premier conferences in college football, and there will always be matchups between the 3 of us, which I think that's pretty cool. I don't think that's any different. I think maybe all of a sudden, if I'm a G5 school, I'm starting to get a little bit nervous that I'm going to start being left out.
Yeah.
But they're still, if you don't expand these conferences, they're still going to need a couple of out-of-conference games that they're going to have to schedule. So if anything, the Big 12 or Big 10, ACC, and Pac-12 are going to become the friends, I think, more so than the SEC of those Power 5 schools. Other thing is, it gives them, if they stay aligned, and this is called an alignment, is what they're calling it. If they stay aligned, it gives them so much leverage in the college football playoff discussions.
Absolutely.
And how that works out, and if they want to stall it, and how many teams it's going to be. Because it seemed like it was a foregone conclusion that it was done, right? 12-team playoff. Greg Sankey and Bob Bowlesby had been meeting on this. All of a sudden, Greg Sankey just ripped Bob Bowlesby's 2 biggest teams away from him. And now you have 3 conference commissioners aligning. And that will mean, if I had to imagine, the athletic directors will fall in line. And a lot of these athletic directors sit on the college football playoff committee. So now I think they have pulled the power, at least evened it out.
Tried to, yeah.
Because Greg Sankey was creating a vacuum.
Yeah.
And I think they've pulled back some control by basically saying, if we stay aligned and we can, the Pac-12 and the Big 10 have pretty much been aligned forever. Because it's the Rose Bowl meetings. They were the 2 conferences that shut down and kind of followed each other last year, shutting down football, and then brought it back roughly at the same time. The ACC, I think, looked around the landscape and said, looked over kind of in the corner at the Big 12, just kind of smiling at him, was like, just like put the hand up on the face and kind of turned away from him.
remnants, yeah, the
and then it
remnants of the Big 12.
saw they got that "you up" text from the Big 10, and ACC was like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
And because I think the ACC's legitimate concern was, and I think this will prevent this now if this really comes to fruition. And again, the announcement from Nicole Auerbach, she said it could be as early as next week. I think the ACC's biggest concern, and to a lesser extent the Big 10, was, does Clemson bowl? Because much like what is the Big 12 without Texas and Oklahoma, what is the ACC, at least football-wise, without Clemson?
Yeah, right now, absolutely nothing.
Right. It's it's a couple of teams between 10 and 15, maybe, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Right. In basketball, I think that's a different story. I think North Carolina and Duke are two of the more, if not the most, elite brands in college basketball, but we all know the money is in college football.
Yep.
And so if Clemson leaves, if Florida State bolts, which Florida State hasn't been successful on the field, and fiscally the school's not doing great, but again, I think a lot of that's TV deals and coaches buyouts, but that's still a huge brand.
Mm-hmm.
If Miami bolts,
then
it
I mean, good luck.
Again, hasn't been great on the field, but those are huge brands. Now all of a sudden, if you're saying we're putting ourselves in place to leverage some of these TV networks, and I think with the alliance or allegiance, Avengers, whatever you want to call it, I'm fairly certain, but don't quote me on this. This will give them the necessary cause to go back and renegotiate TV deals. So I think that when you look at some of the schools and say, we are coming together, we're forming a conglomerate, and we're going to help each other, and we are going to become the center of college football. We're not going to let the SEC take this over. Because right now, make no mistake about it, the capital of college football is Birmingham.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened about a month ago when all this transition started.
I mean, it is the center of the college football universe.
Yeah, no.
It's a mall in Birmingham.
Who would have ever thought,
It's the most college football thing you've ever heard in your life.
That's what I mean. That's why I said too, when all the rumors started coming out, like they're going to get Oklahoma and Texas, and they're still looking to expand. I'm like, they're just trying to take everything. Like they're just trying to take over college football.
And again,
like,
that might be in the future, but everything I've read and the people I've spoken to is like they happen really fast. Basically, like Texas and Oklahoma were kind of reading the tea leaves in the Big 12, and they wanted to go where the money was.
Yeah.
And so they joined, and so Greg Sankey was just kind of fluid.
Right.
And so like everybody's like, he's going for that 30 team. I don't necessarily know that that's the case. I think Greg Sankey, like a good businessman, is saying, I'm going to make deals that make my board members or my athletic directors in schools more money.
Yep.
And as soon as it doesn't make you more money, as soon as, say, it's like Florida State's like, hey, we want to join. It's like, well, let me see, do you bring me more money than you're going to cost me?
Right.
Like if I'm paying everybody $60 million a year, but I have to add you, and all of a sudden I'm having to pay everybody $55 million a year, I don't know if that's something I want to do.
Yep.
Right. I don't think Greg Sankey was ready to go quite to 30 teams just yet. But I think with the Big 10, Pac-12, ACC coming together, they're stopping that from happening at all.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. And make no mistake about it. I mean, people don't want to hear it, but make no mistake about it. That's what it's all about, is that money and that increase you see in the bank account for everybody, not only for you, but for everybody around you, right? Like you said, that's their job at the end of the day. So, we'll see how it all works out. I mean, like you said, with the ACC and the Big 10 and the Pac-12, I think the interesting thing to me with that is like you said, they kind of take control a little bit of some of those decisions and whatnot. And if everyone follows suit, they can come together and kind of make those votes happen whichever kind of way they want to. So that is really interesting. I think my thing is, like, with scheduling and whatnot, you're going to see a lot of these crossover games that, like you were talking about. Well, the SEC's strength of schedule, no matter what team you talk about, it's going to be strong enough for the college football playoff, no matter what. I mean, my kind of like
That's a good point.
Rebuttal a little bit is, okay, but you still don't have a full season of non-conference, of totally conference games. So now where do they go? That's kind of what I'm like. Now where does the SEC go for these non-conference games? And is the ACC, Big 10, Pac-12 alliance going to be exclusive to those three conferences in out of conference games, right?
Right.
Like, do they only schedule those teams for their
I don't think
non-conference
this
games or not?
has been one of the bigger things. I don't think you lose South Carolina, Clemson. I don't think you lose Georgia, Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
But you do come to the agreement of, again, we're going to align when it comes to big time decisions. The three of us are going to be aligned, and then also every one of your teams will have a marquee game every year,
Right.
something like that, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like if Penn State has to play Wake Forest, well, then we'll also, inside of their schedule for one of their other non-con games, we'll also give them Stanford,
Right.
or something like that, right? It's like, or give them USC or Oregon or something like that. Give them, quote unquote, one of the premier games. I guess this year Arizona State could be considered one of those, but it's just, you give them, okay, for you the lower level one, and then we'll also give you this marquee one, and that's how we'll rotate it. And then you'll also have, if you're playing a 9-game conference schedule, you'll also have one more out of conference game that you can go on schedule, whether it's a traditional rivalry, whether you want to go out and get a G5 school or an FCS school and schedule them there. Like Clemson and South Carolina, we've talked about this a bunch, they're contractually obligated to play another school from the state every year. So they're going to have to find a way to facilitate that in the schedule. So do you stay at an 8-game conference schedule and play 4 non-con games? So it's just, there's a whole lot that have to be worked out. But I think more so than anything, there's a speeding train with the SEC, and all of a sudden, Cam, you'll appreciate another superhero reference. Now all of a sudden you're Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man 2, and he's trying to slow down the train a little bit. I think that's what the Big 12 or Big 10, I gotta stop doing the Big 12. You gotta just take them out of the vernacular.
Well, man, eventually you're just not going to have to talk about them at all, so it's fine.
It's fair. And I do want to like leave this segment at this. I don't think SEC fans, and I'll say even this, SEC media members a lot of times appreciate how big the Big Ten is. Like if there's any conference that can maybe go blow for blow, maybe not like on the field success the past couple of years, but in terms of brands and history, like when I say brands, I mean brands throughout.
State,
like I say Alabama, they say Ohio State. I say Florida, Michigan.
Right.
You say Georgia, Penn State. Like they're one of the few, or the only conference I would say that can really go blow for blow in terms of blue blood conferences. But I mean, with Texas and Oklahoma, obviously that gets skewed way in the SEC's favor. But as of right now, I don't think like a lot of people understand the pull and the sway the Big Ten has. Yeah. So that's why when last year they canceled their season, that was a seismic blow.
Right.
And maybe not a good one for them and a good look for them, but one that people stop and listen. Like Pac-12 cancels their season. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Interesting.
Like,
all right.
Yeah. Vast majority of the country saying, all right. When the Big Ten cancels their season, everyone kind of stops.
Yeah.
Because that is a huge, huge brand. And so when it comes to money, I think right now their TV deal is actually worth more than the SEC's TV deal right now.
Yeah. Which is what I was going to say when you started talking about Notre Dame. Like I've always been kind of blown away that Notre Dame hasn't looked at the Big Ten and gone and done that yet. I
think Notre Dame values their freedom. I do, because they can go out there and make as much money.
This is what's weird.
You look at the money they could make in there. I mean,
Notre Dame's in the ACC for every sport but football.
Again, that's just because they're allowed to. It's very much what we're talking about here with the alliance. Notre Dame was like, we'll give you our brand and everything, and then we'll give you, I think it's 4 games a year that Notre Dame plays ACC schools, and we'll give you that, but we also keep our freedom in terms of NBC, where we get all of our home games on NBC. Like so if Clemson, like last year, Clemson's playing at Notre Dame, ESPN wants that game on ABC, but it's not. That's an NBC game because NBC owns their home game. So that is a contract for Notre Dame. I don't know how longer they're going to be able to pull that. And when you start getting to a 12-team playoff, if that happens, they're really going to have to consider joining a conference, because I think they might start getting locked out of some of these big games.
They probably will. I know they're in the ACC for like basketball and stuff. I'm just waiting for them to join in football. That's the last thing.
I think it's coming sometime in the near future. We got to take a quick break, though. We'll come back. We'll talk some more college football. Georgia, what could we potentially see rolling out against Clemson following a lot of injuries and a lot of people having to step away through what's been a rough camp so far for Georgia? We'll dive into all that next right here on Second Down. It has been a tough camp for Georgia so far. Injuries, players having to step away. And listen, if you're starting the season with Vanderbilt like you did a couple years ago, maybe you're not so worried. But you are starting the season with one of the two, or if not the best, at least one of the top two teams in the country in Clemson. So it's a hot start, basically.
Yeah.
Right? It's like for the people out there who play video games, it's a hot jump. You're not jumping into like the faraway corner of the map and working your way in.
I'm nervous.
For a deep reference, a deep cut, PJ, you're jumping into school.
Yeah, I was hoping you would say
it's
that.
basically what I'm saying
Straight
there. But
in.
yeah, you're jumping into the deep end this season, and Clemson is waiting for you. It's looking like you will not have Eric Gilbert and Darnell Washington, and add that on top of George Pickens going out.
Yeah.
So you're going to be missing, I would say, 3 of your top 5 pass catchers to start the season. We talked about this yesterday. Do you now start relying more on your running backs? I don't think you start relying more on your running backs. I think they were going to rely on the running backs anyway.
Oh, agreed.
I think as much as we want to talk about how the passing game is going to change, I still think this is going to be a running football team. Flip side of the defense, I think this is the one that hurts more is Tyke Smith going out. So who replaces him? And I think Brenny's the guy who steps there. But I reached out to a few people really close to the Georgia program. And I'm like, okay, so Georgia wins the toss. They elect to receive. JT Daniels running out there at 7:30 on September 4th facing this Clemson's defense. I'm like, who's to his left, who's to his right, and who's standing behind him or beside him in the backfield? And what I have garnered is, as of right now, if Georgia was to go out and play football right now, Jack Saint, the young man who had the pretty gruesome injury in the Florida game last year, he's back to 100%. As of right now, if they walked out there right now, he's your X receiver. And he's a guy who had a lot of momentum. I mean, again, he started that Florida game last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he had a lot of momentum going into that season. And there's some other guys behind him that are really good too, like Justin Robinson is a guy who's made some strides. And A.D. Mitchell, the guy who caught the freshman who caught all the touchdown passes in the spring game.
Mhm.
And he's the one, when we were at SEC Media Days, JT Daniels mentioned him, saying, I asked him, I was like, who's somebody who stood out like in spring, like somebody, and he was like, oh, first thing, A.D. Mitchell.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe that's just a quarterback talking about a wide receiver, but he's like, no, A.D. Mitchell's the guy that stood out. And I think he's going to play a role, but it would be Marcus Rosemary, Jack Saint out there as your starting X, slide it over and say they're an 11 personnel. So 3 receivers, a tight end, a running back. Slide it over. Keiris Jackson is going to be in the slot, which I think most people would assume. And then on the other side out wide is going to be Jermaine Burton. They've tried to work Jermaine Burton, and he can play some X like he had to do last year against Mississippi State a little bit. He can play that spot. But again, left or right, you'll have Jack Saint, Keiris Jackson, Jermaine Burton. Then tight end right now is John Fitzpatrick, who has played a lot of football for Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's not Darnell Washington or Eric Gilbert. I'm not saying he's not as good as them. I'm saying he's not the name that we've been talking about. Dude's 6'7", 250 pounds. Like,
you can't teach that.
I don't think you have a huge drop off there, and he can block his tail off.
Yeah.
And I also ask about the running back rotation. I'm like, okay, who's taking that first snap? Everyone I've talked to, Zamir White.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard that he just has a different mentality. He came back, obviously, and I think it's gotten, we say this, I don't know if everybody says, up in his craw a little bit, like it's in his teeth a little bit, that
not everybody says it. I've heard it.
Yeah,
enough,
it's up.
but
You get it up in your craw, like that's
yeah,
you ain't happy about that, right? He's heard from people that say, dude, you shouldn't come back because now you're going to be third, fourth on that rotation. Like, not that you were so good, you should have gone. It's that you should have seen all these guys coming back. Are you sure you're still going to play? That got up on him a little bit. Yeah. And so he's had a different kind of camp. And they said the way he's carrying the football and the blows he's delivering, he's the number one running back right now. Now, could that mean Zamir White's your starting running back? He goes in for the first play, gets 5 yards, and immediately is coming off the field because James Cook's coming in for a package? Absolutely. Or Kenny McIntosh is coming in for a package? Absolutely.
Big possibility, yeah.
But I have been a huge proponent of Kendall Milton because I think he's a guy who's going to be really special.
Yeah.
Apparently, Zamir White, he's playing with a little bit different level right now. And he's got, 2 years
on
Kendall Milton? And that's 2 years lifting, eating,
Right.
sweating at these practices because we forget last year the freshmen didn't have a camp like this.
Right.
They
Exactly.
haven't gone through camp. They
Oh,
haven't
yeah.
gone to the thing
COVID,
where,
yeah.
right, they haven't gone through the spring drills in a year and then gone through camp where we're putting you in a hotel or we're putting you in our team facilities. You're on lockdown and your life is football.
Mm-hmm.
They hadn't gone through that. Zamir White has gone through that.
Yeah.
He's a vet. And a lot of these other players have gone through that. And I think Zamir White took a lot of that personally. And that's a dude I do not want to meet in the hole if he has a chip on his shoulder. I don't want to meet him in the hole, period. That's a lot
Yeah.
of dude.
No, absolutely. And he came into college as a lot of dude already. And the fact that he's been able to develop not only his body, but his mentality too. Because I think a lot of people have kind of been, I know me, I'm not, but I'll watch Georgia games and I've always kind of waited for that next step from him. And hopefully, what we're hearing is true and he's able to translate that to the field as well. But looking forward to seeing what he kind of brings to the table with that new mentality this year.
Other guy quickly here I want to touch on before we go to break. We mentioned John Fitzpatrick at tight end. They will still be doing some two tight sets and some power looks. Look for Brock Bowers to be the guy, a freshman tight end coming in who's made a lot of plays. You've seen him in a lot of the Georgia videos making some one-handed catches, looking really good. You've had some guys come out and say, Kendall Milton actually came out and said he's that dude. Like, which is about as high of a compliment as you can get in football when you say he's that dude.
Absolutely.
So Brock Bowers is another guy to watch out for at that tight end position. So there's been some injuries. There's been some folks stepping away, but still a very dangerous Georgia offense. We got more to come here on second down. We'll come back with the final segment next. Second Down on ESPN Radio is presented to you by the Uniform Source. Big show coming up today here on 3 and Out. We'll be joined by Eric Kane from 991 The Sports Animal in Knoxville. Get our latest update from Tennessee. So they've had some quarterbacks move on. Never seen quite a migration. Haven't seen more people migrating out of an area since, I don't know, like Moses leading people through the desert. I mean, Tennessee, my goodness, there have been a lot of folks leaving that, and another one. So we'll talk to Eric Kane about that. Also be joined by Colin Lacey from the Georgia Southern Sports Network. I'll get the latest from Georgia Southern as they get ready to kick off their season as well. So a whole bunch of college football talk coming up today on 3 and Out. BJ Bennett, Ben Troop, Kevin Thomas. Also, question of the day, and we'll be taking your calls, 912-342-7184. What is the greatest radio call in the history of college football? Today is National Radio Day. So again, 912-342-7184. We'll take all your calls next on 3 and Out.